Welcome to Oddball. I'm Amin Elhassan. That over there in our Miami studios is the one and only Izzy Gutierrez wearing propaganda for the Thompson twins. Look, we get it. You're in the tank for the Thompson twins. You don't have to wear merch as well.
While that is true, I also just came from a ski trip where I packed all my warm stuff and never unpacked it. So I reached in the closet, found one that I hadn't worn, threw it on. Just happens to be perfect.
Happens to be.
You mentioned the Thompson twins. Speaking of all-stars, because they will be one day, we're going to get to our East all-star ballots, and I've got a few doozies that I'm probably going to get roasted for. But before that, there was a trade that did not involve a single name that has probably sparked more conversation than any such trade in the history of the NBA. It was between the Phoenix Suns and the Utah Jazz. Phoenix traded their 2031 first-round pick to the Jazz for 3 first-round picks. And this is very Danny Ainge. It's him looking at a 2031 unprotected pick, thinking, hey, Phoenix might not be as good. I'm going to take that, and you can have these 3 less attractive first-round picks. Shams tweeted this before. Amin, if you can explain this in a way that only Amin can, why did this spark so much conversation?
All right, so let's just start by explaining the Stepien rule. The NBA has something called the Stepien rule, which prevents teams from trading first-round picks in future consecutive drafts if they don't have a drafted pick in them. Meaning, I can't trade my 2025 and my 26 and my 27 first-round picks because they're consecutive. I've got to space them out a year in between. It all started with a guy named Ted Stepien, who's the owner of the Cavs back in the day, and he literally just traded away all the picks all the time, and the team was awful as a result. And that's, by the way, if you ever wondered how the Lakers could be awesome and then draft James Worthy number 1, thank you, Ted Stepien, right? So the Suns, because of the Kevin Durant deal, owe a pick every other year to Brooklyn. And then in the off years, it's a pick swap, but you can't trade those because they're locked in by the Stepien rule. So what they needed to do was acquire more first-round picks in order to free up their ability to package picks in deals. Now, here's the problem. Danny Ainge gave them 3 first-round picks in the, so that they can package and do whatever in return for their 2031 completely unprotected pick. The best way I can give you an analogy is if the Suns went to Danny Ainge and said, hey, do you have change for a 20? And Danny Ainge said, sure, here's 2 5s and a $2 bill. And the Suns said, sweet, thanks. Right? Like, I love that. I love new owners. But that's pretty much what happened way back when the Nets and the Celtics did that deal for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry. The Nets gave the Celtics all of their picks completely unprotected, basically. Those picks every other year, and they gave them pick swaps in the off years. And so what ends up happening is Danny Ainge is he betting that, hey, 6 years from now, you guys are going to be trash. And when you are, your pick is going to be great, and I get it.
And now that the Phoenix Suns have those picks, they have more maneuverability to make trades, and everybody knows what this means. Jimmy Butler is going to find his way to Phoenix. Now, there are reports out there that Bradley Beal is willing to waive his no-trade clause to go to Milwaukee, which now that means Milwaukee, Phoenix, Miami. Seems like an interesting trio of trades there, of trade partners, but it feels like there's going to be at least a 4th team to make this happen, maybe even a 5th team if you listen to Shams on ESPN. And this kind of leads me to this game yesterday between the Heat and the Trailblazers. I mean, because I don't know how much of the post-trade demand Jimmy Butler Miami Heat you've seen, but it is clear and obvious that he has no interest being out there. He is going through the motions. I think he's gotten a steal in only 1 of his last 5 games, and that's not very Jimmy Butler. Hasn't gotten more than 4 free throw attempts in any of these games that he has post-trade demand. And you kind of look at, there's certain points of yesterday's game where there was one point where he was clearly given a mid-range jumper, kind of thought about doing it, and then said, no, these aren't the shots that Eric Spoelstra wants me to take, and immediately passed it out. And he passed it out during a time where the Heat could have used a bucket because the Trailblazers are coming in hot at this time. So it's just obvious that he wants no part of it. He's wearing, I mean, though we have a shot of this, he's wearing Phoenix Suns colorway shoes, which he wore in December, but he was also trying to go to Phoenix in December. So
yeah.
that probably could have been a hint there. And I find it hilarious. There was this one point in the game, where DeAndre Ayton was just going off. I think he shot 10 for 14, all pretty much in the mid-range and putbacks. And there was like a couple possessions in a row where he had a mid-range jumper. And you see Jimmy after their offensive possession kind of go like this and say, hey, why aren't we crowding them? And then he just kind of gave up on that thought. And he's like, whatever. Because DeAndre Ayton, like how comical is that? That's the guy we laughed at. That Portland was able to get him instead of whatever Miami offered back for Damian Lillard. And now, again, sort of full circle-ish for Jimmy Butler. That's possibly the last straw to get him out the building. Like I'm looking at Eric Spoelstra watching his team on the floor, and you could hear his thinking saying, I have to give up this game because this dude doesn't want to be here and he's ruining our vibe. I will say Tyler Hero was out for the first time all year, so that kind of ruined things offensively, but it's still Portland.
There is a poetry to it all, right? Like this all comes crashing down against the Portland Trailblazers, who it's not like they're doing great as a result of the deal that they did either, but it's nice to be like, you know what? My life sucks, but it's fun to see you guys suffer a little bit more than I am at this moment. All right, so what could this deal potentially look like? Evan Sideri on Twitter put this out there, kind of some parameters. The trade would be between the Heat, the Suns, and the Bucks, and a facilitating fourth team. Phoenix would receive Jimmy Butler. Milwaukee gets Bradley Beal. Miami gets Chris Middleton, and I've heard reports also perhaps Bobby Portis. And the facilitator takes on salary and presumably draft picks for being a good sport about it all.
I immediately saw this trade and thought to myself, Bobby Portis. And that's pretty much it. Because Chris Middleton, health-wise, he's cooked. I think the idea, if I'm a Miami Heat fan, of having Bobby Portis, just depth in the front court, tough guy, very much Miami Heat, if you will. Yeah. I think that's fine. That's fine. But if that's what you're getting back for Jimmy, I'm not really in love with it. I know you would probably then take a first-round pick instead of Chris Middleton. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, like when someone said, what do you think of the Heat getting Chris Middleton? I said, does it come with a time machine? It's just a reality. And I'm not even talking about how good of a player he is right now, because I think if he were playing consistently, he could help the Miami Heat. He's a good vet. And at his size, sometimes defense is just being a big person on the floor. And at 6'8", Chris Middleton is that. I think the bigger issue is he hasn't shown a consistency on the floor. Like, we don't even know if he's 100% healthy. He hasn't been able to stay on the floor consistently this season for the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's like, so you're doing all this for Bobby Portis?
There was a hilarious Giannis quote after a game where, I mean, he won a championship with this guy, but he was absolutely ripping him. Down in Miami, we need dogs, right? Giannis was comparing Middleton to an entirely different animal.
It feels like whenever he's on the floor, you guys move as a team. You get into things. Just kind of, what does that mean?
You have to. He's like overcompensating because he moves like a turtle, and we have to move faster for him. You know, defensively and offensively.
I mean, that is some roasted turtle right there. And like that's not what you want if you're Miami thinking, wow, we're going to lose Jimmy Butler and get a defensive liability because he can hit a couple of buckets in the fourth quarter. Not the best. But for Milwaukee, upgrading to Bradley Beal, do you think that backcourt of Lillard and Beal with Giannis is enough?
So the positive, Bradley Beal right now is a better player than Chris Middleton. So the ceiling is higher with Bradley Beal than it is with Chris Middleton. The downside. Hey, Bradley Beal, I know how being a third banana in Phoenix was really tough. How would you like to be a third banana in Milwaukee? Right? Like, oh, that's an issue. The defensive liability of a Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal backcourt makes me shudder. And then when you throw in Gary Trent Jr. as a third in that, it's like, oh my God, you're hemorrhaging points. And ultimately, while I think it makes them better, I don't think it makes them better enough to make a difference as far as what's going to happen at the end of this season. And now you've just locked in to another extra year's worth of salary because Middleton and Portis, they both have player options after this year, and it's arguable whether they're going to opt in. Bradley Beal, of course, has 2 years and then another option, I believe, after that. So, like, it's one of those things where this is one of my favorite analogies that I like to make, which is It's like, how close am I to the moon right now? Right now, where I am, however million miles. Okay, how about now? All right, I'm closer. Technically, I stood up. I am closer to the moon than I was a second ago, but it's not in any meaningful way that makes it almost
Don't give up
there.
on me. You'll eventually get there. You'll eventually get there.
Reach my fingers a little bit more. Like it's not that level. So, that's what you get into. And then the final piece of this we haven't even addressed is the Suns.
Well, that to me is wild. Like this is a classic. We saw Danny Ainge. We just talked about it. He fleeced them for a way better draft pick than the other three that they gave up, and because they're wanting the right now. And Matt Ishbia, the very eager new owner, I love new owners, is willing to pay Jimmy Butler 3 years, $150 million reportedly, so that he can win them a championship. Is that really happening? Now I know he's a better fit there because of. He's more of a big guy playing in a small forward's body, right? He'll bang inside. He'll get to the free throw line. They don't really have a big that's doing that on the regular, and it's possibly more suited. But that's quite the gamble. That's quite the mortgaging for however short-term future, long-term future you want to say it is for that trio. Like, I don't know if it's going to work.
Izzy, that's the part that I think is really staggering. The highest, wildest imaginations, best case scenario is this trio wins a championship, whether it's this year or next year, right? Again, by 2031, none of them will be a Phoenix Sun. 2 of them will be in the league. The third one probably, history tells us, will be somewhere else. And so it is, you are, like you said, you are betting the mortgage on double zeros on the roulette wheel. Because here's where it gets crazy. It's like, look, I love Jimmy Butler. I think he's a winner. I think he cares. I think he's a phenomenal player. But he left Chicago on bad terms. He left Minnesota on bad terms. He left Philadelphia on bad terms. He's leaving Miami on bad terms. Do you really think the 5th marriage is the one where he's going to find true love and live happily ever after?
5th time. By the way, real quick, speaking of numbers here, I've never thought of my lead man as my top banana. Like, there's only banana talk when you're talking about 3 bananas, right? Yeah. It's a second or third banana.
Or even 2 bananas. You could be second banana. There's never a first banana. There's never a top
There's
banana.
never just, like LeBron James is never a banana unless he's got Kyrie Irving next to him. Then he's one of the bananas.
LeBron James can be a banana if the banana is shaped like a boat and he's on it with Chris Paul and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade.
And he's wearing a Lakers uniform, banana colors.
There it is.
But I would say we talked about a trade with Brad Beal because of some incestuous connections there with Detroit. If he were able to waive his no trade clause to go there, that ended hypothetically with Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr. coming back down to Miami and Bradley Beal being in Detroit and Jimmy being in Phoenix. Would you rather have Tobias and Tim Hardaway if you're the Heat than Bobby Portis and Chris Middleton?
Well, it's funny. I've been thinking about this. First of all, we know it's a 4-team deal. We don't know who the 4th team is. Maybe the 4th team is Detroit.
Still could be a possibility.
It still could be with Beal going to Milwaukee and Detroit getting Portis and Middleton or whatever. But yeah, if you're just giving me the options of which one would I rather have in a deal, whether it's Beal, whether it's the Milwaukee guys or the Detroit guys, give me the Detroit guys because I know they play. Like that's I got to steal a Marcellus Wileyism. The best ability is availability. And at this point, especially what Miami has gone through, not just this season, but over the last few years, just give me guys who are going to get on the floor and play. Not to mention, obviously, the contractual.
You can sell it to the fans, right? There's the Tim Hardaway, his son, his dad played there. Yep. Tobias Harris over me. Like for the Miami Heat to be able to utilize Tobias Harris would be funny.
Yep.
Whether that's going to result in 50 wins or 45 wins, probably not. But at least you can sell it to the fans a little better.
Yeah, but I might get 45 with those 2.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to the All-Star ballot. We did our Western Conference All-Stars yesterday, Izzy. Today we're going to tackle the East. And so we're going to take a look at the starters, the reserves, and the 2 wild cards. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll start with the starters. And my 2 guard starters are, it's pretty easy. It's Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell. I've got Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've got Jason Tatum. And then I've got Evan Mobley.
You don't have
to me,
Cat.
I do not have Cat as a starter. And that to me is simply just the result of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like there's a, 6.5 or is it 8.5? There's an 8.5 game difference between the Cavs and the Knicks. And historically, those teams get rewarded. And I'm just going to say this one more time. I don't know why we're doing it this way because there are 3 starting teams of 5, not 2 starting teams of 5 this year amongst these all-stars. So Cat is going to be a starter anyway. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I first of all, I think you're ascribing a level of kind of prestige to being a starter over a reserve all-star that nobody really cares about once the game is over, right? Like the start of the game, yes, and then by a week later, it's like he was an all-star, not he was an all-star starter.
Right.
The only
You're
time
either an all-star or all-star MVP, no other references.
Yeah, they don't even remember the injury replacements half the time, right? You're just an all-star. So I'm staggered. I think Karl Anthony Towns is having a phenomenal year. This is a guy that a lot of people question, like, oh, he's going to go back to play for Tibbs. Tibbs is demanding. Is he going to be able to handle it? And I think he's handled it. This is as good of a half season to start his Knick career as he could have possibly had. I can't imagine it being any better. He's shooting the ball great. He's helped this team tremendously, and his rebounding has been off the charts.
I'm not even arguing with anything you just said. I'm just making the pick based on what you said first is nobody's going to remember who the starter was anyway. Yeah. So I'm going to reward that team that is just like still has single figures in the loss column.
Boiled by my own logic. All right. Let's take a look at the reserves.
Whew. So we're going to go where? Guards first? I mean, I got Darius Garland, Trae Young. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I've got Jaylen Brown, and then, of course, Karl Anthony Towns there. And then I've got Pascal Siakam. And that's one I think you're going to roast me on.
What?
He's played every game for that team. He's been their assignment on all the tough offensive players. He's just been phenomenal for that team, and they're in playoff position. I think he deserves to be an all-star.
What about Cade Cunningham, man?
This was a numbers thing. Again, we're going to have 3 different teams here. This was a numbers thing. One of them had to be a reserve. One of them had to be a wild card. Spoiler alert.
All right. Well, let's do this. Let me see your wild cards. Show them on the table. Okay. So
look at us.
All right.
We've got the exact same team, just different locations.
Different. All right.
Can we talk about Tyler Hero for a second? Because there's a couple people missing from this list that people are going to say, what? Yeah. LaMelo Ball?
Yeah.
Get off my all-star team. You've missed too many games. You missed, I think, 11 games. He's played in 28. They're 11 and 17, I want to say, in those 28 games, not resulting in winning. Very classic looter in a riot situation. Yeah. I do not want LaMelo Ball on my all-star team. Damian Lillard, the numbers are similar between him and Tyler. Tyler's a little bit more efficient, but I give Tyler the edge because he's been sort of number one option on that Heat team all season long, whereas Damian can kind of, play alongside Giannis. I mean, I don't know who else you left off your list that was a difficult one. Tyrese Maxey was the third one for me, and that was more of a factor of that team struggling. That team is just not good.
To me, the guy I agonized the most of leaving off was Jared Allen. I was
he's on my snub list too, yeah.
I was like, man, like if we're going to sing the praises of the Cavs' success, and that's why they're sending all these all-stars, how do you not send a guy who's the central figure to their defense?
I picked Evan Mobley over him because I thought not only is he you say Jared Allen is the central figure in their defense, but Mobley's the most versatile. Sure. And shooting 40% from 3 this year, uptick on attempts. Like that tells me that part of the reason they're as good as they are, surprising, is because of his increase in productivity.
To me, I picked Evan Mobley as well. I'm just saying Jared Allen plays such a pivotal role to their success. How do you leave him out? But it's just tough. There's so many good names. And, he was the odd man out. And I kind of felt uncomfortable. This takes you into the mind of a voter. I felt uncomfortable giving them 4 all-stars. Yeah. And they're like a half game or a game better than Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma City only gets 2.
Right.
Like that was
and
like kind
the
of
Magic get none, by the way, because of injuries.
The Magic getting and that was the other one I was going to say. If Franz Wagner or Paolo Banchero had just played a little bit more,
yes,
either of them, maybe even both of them, depending on how many games they would, maybe both of them would have been all stars. Yeah. But because
they both would have been healthier, they would have won more. I agree. They probably would have both.
Yeah, and so they missed so much time that it was just like it was hard to do. And LaMelo, look, again, we're gonna get killed for this, and I'm all right with it. Because let me tell you why, man. Like, I'm not saying everything that wins and losses hinge on one person. But in his case, it hinges a lot on him. They're like, look, I get it. It's fun to watch, and he's got an appealing style. He's clearly a very skilled player. But like, it's okay to say he hasn't made that leap yet. And that what I mean by that leap is exactly what Izzy said earlier. To go from looter in a riot to someone who is actively elevating the people around him to success. Man, not to go off on a tangent, but I was watching Lakers Wizards last night, and I'm watching. I didn't know
that was a tangent you wanted to go off. I gotta disagree now. Do we have to?
So this is a good one because I was watching Lakers Wizards, and I thought to myself, as I'm watching this game, the Lakers are a better team than the Wizards. They have better talent than the Wizards. The Wizards aren't losing the game because of the talent discrepancy. They're losing the game because they keep making dumb mistakes, bad decisions, poor decisions that are leading to easy opportunities for the Lakers to take advantage of. And so many times in our league, bad teams aren't bad because they are deficient in talent. They're bad because they don't play the right way. Now, that's not to say they don't lose some games because, damn, the team is just better than us. But a lot of times it's just a compounding of people playing poor basketball. Charlotte is an example of that because they got a bunch of names there. I'm like, I'd like to have him on a team. Cody Martin, I posted out on Threads about a month ago. I said, someone please emancipate Cody Martin because this guy should be playing on a winning team somewhere, helping them win. But it's like when you are it's just a bunch of people and everyone follows the lead of the best player. Hey, if he's not taking this seriously, why should I? And that's why I look at LaMelo Ball. I don't know if he is leading those guys and demanding the excellence that is required in a way that other young players like Anthony Edwards, like Victor Wembanyama, like, take your pick of a young player around the league. Tyler Hero, I guess, to some extent in Miami. Like these guys are doing things in a way and adhering to winning basketball in a way that I don't see at this point LaMelo Ball doing.
I mean, when we get back, I'm going to tell you a really quick LaMelo Ball story, which maybe has affected my thinking on him. We'll also play Prop a Slot. I know exactly what that game is, right?
Yeah.
All right, it's time for Prop a Slot. Prop a Slot is presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Oh, yeah.
All right, you know the rules.
Yep.
I know the rules. But Amin really knows the rules, so Amin's going to tell you the rules.
Yeah, basically it's a slot machine that generates real DraftKings prop bets from tonight's rivalry games. If we get to the third spin, we have to take that one. We've got under 2 minutes on the clock. Let's go. First spin, give it to me. Who's the player? What's the prop? I'm talking to fill in. That's what we do. We filibuster here. Okay, it's Cade Cunningham, who apparently isn't good enough to be one of Izzy's reserves. He's got to be a wild card. Under on points. They're playing the Hawks on Wednesday night, and the under is 26.5 minus 110 on the DraftKings Sportsbook app.
This one makes me nervous because I feel like with all the steals guys that the Hawks have, you're going to want to hang on to the ball and maybe score a little bit and not move the ball too much. Really weak reasoning, but I'm going to pass on this one because he could have 24, he could have 34. Let's do the next one.
Yeah, in general, I don't like the unders. I feel like they're negative. So let's move on. Give me a second spin. What do we got? Who do we got? Where are we at? More filibustering. It looks like it's going to be...
Got some interesting faces on there.
Darius Garland. Under on assists. Wow, we're really negative Nellies tonight.
But you know what? I like this one, though. Because they're playing the Rockets.
Yes, they're under 6.5 assists. That's plus 110 on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. They are playing the Houston Rockets, as you mentioned, which is a classic NBA rivalry. Garland has gone over 6.5 assists in 7 of his last 9 games. Ken, and you can pop your overtime elite.
It doesn't matter if it's Amin Thompson. They play frantic defense. They like to just make people make extra passes. I don't think he's going to collect that many assists. I want to take this one under. I'd hate betting unders, but I'll take this one.
We'll take this one, and we'll end the show there. Thanks, everybody, for watching Oddball. Is he
Oh, wait,
supposed to-
I got to tell my LaMelo Ball story real quick.
Oh,
One time,
okay.
3 seasons ago, I was doing sideline reporting and I went to talk to him right before, right after shoot around. He spent all 20 minutes picking his toes. It was disgusting.
Ew!